welcome back to the channel. I'm Kevin, and today I'm going to be making the Antares Fang dagger from the solo leveling webtoon. This is from the webtoon's epilogue, and is actually a set of 6 daggers. I actually didn't know these daggers existed until a couple of months ago. I wasn't that into the epilogue chapters, and didn't realize these daggers were a thing until a couple of people in the comments section recommended I try making them. I do sometimes take recommendations, so if you have a project you'd like to see me do, then go ahead and leave me a comment. Maybe like and subscribe while you're at it. Anyways, I'm not going to make 6 of these, so I chose the one with the most clearly defined art and went from there. I put together a reference in GIMP. I decided to make this 600mm long, or just under 2 feet. I've found that 22 to 24 inches is about the right length for a solo leveling dagger. Anyone who's followed the channel for a while will probably know that a few years ago, I made all of the daggers from the series based on the art in the webtoon, and recently I've remade a couple based on the updated designs from the anime. When I first made these, I carefully measured out everything, but the results came out looking a little bit small. In my more recent attempts, I've scaled things up, which looks better, even if these daggers could pass for a machete. I edited together 2 images from the webtoon, and sketched over it to fill in the blanks. I did all the 3D modeling in Blender. Every single part of this was made by tracing over my reference image with a plane, then extruding it and rounding over the edges with a subdivision surface modifier. After doing that, I went back and added the recessed details, which were kind of tricky. The modeling was fairly time-consuming compared to other solo leveling daggers. The level of detail was about the same, but most of the other daggers are made up of small, clearly defined pieces which I can model separately. This is just a couple of large pieces, so I couldn't break the modeling up as much as I normally do. I started by printing the handle, and got a nasty surprise. When I tried holding this first section, I realized it was really thin, and that my final results might look a little bit scrawny in my hand. I forgot the golden rule of making something from a webtoon or a manga. You really need to do a sanity check on all of your measurements, because the art might look great, but that doesn't mean that the dimensions are accurate. If you blindly follow a reference like I did, you might end up with some goofy dimensions. I quickly modified these files and reprinted this piece, so it was a little bit thicker and felt better in my hand. Then I went and printed the second piece. I test fitted these pieces together and realized I hadn't updated the file to account for the larger handle. This was really dumb on my part, but it allowed me to catch another mistake that I made. With all the spikes coming off of this, the available space for me to hold onto was a little too small. This is really a continuation of my earlier mistake. So I went back into Blender and stretched the handle out by 10 to 15mm, so I had a little bit more space to hold onto. I reprinted everything, and it went fairly smoothly. I did end up with one piece, where the biscuit hole was halfway missing due to an export error in Blender. I clipped off half of the biscuit, so I could try to fit these 2 together, only to realize that I had clipped off the wrong half, and these didn't line up at all. I glued all the pieces together with super glue, and used some painter's tape to hold things in place while it dried. At this point, I realized I missed another detail. I didn't include some sections of the gold crystals when I divided this file up for printing, so I had to make those separately and glue them on. I fixed all of these issues in the files I've uploaded, so if you decide to make your own, you won't have to deal with any of this. Once this was together, I started with some wood filler, and then did some sanding to hide the joints between the pieces. I like to start by using my Dremel tool to sand these joins, which makes finishing a little bit easier, but the design of this dagger didn't really allow for that. I sprayed this with some automotive primer, which gets it ready for painting and will fill small imperfections. I sprayed this in 2 passes and made a little loop out of painter's tape so I could hang this up to dry. I did another round of wood filler, sanding, and priming before moving on to the painting. I started by roughly applying matte colors to everything. The joints were still pretty obvious at this point, which did annoy me, but I knew it would look better once all the paint was on there. These kind of details will still show up if you're photographing it from 8 inches away, like I am. But if you're using this for a cosplay or putting up on your wall, it'll look totally fine. I mixed some purple paint. It was about 50-50 folk art metallic paint and normal matte acrylic paint. I always start by using a small brush to outline the details, before coming back with a larger brush to fill in the rest. I repeated this for the lighter purple on the handle, as well as the golden crystals. I did the black last, because it was going to be easy to find the edges with. This took the longest since there was a lot of details to do, and I had to be very careful since I'd already painted all the other sections. I ended up going back and doing another coat on pretty much all of this, just to get more consistent coverage. All in all, I spent several hours painting this, which wasn't as bad as it sounds. I put on some fun videos in the background, and then I do a coat, wash out my brushes, wait for it to dry a bit, and then go back to paint another section. My neck was a little bit stiff at the end of it, but it was a pretty relaxing way to spend a Saturday. I always mention that I spray on a clear coat, but this time I really wanted to show you why. This is what it looks like before, with just the paint. I sprayed this with some clear matte sealer, like usual. Now this is what it looks like afterwards. I find that the shinier things are, up to a certain point, the more finished they appear. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the final results. If I could go back and change anything, aside from the mistakes I've already called out so far, it would probably be how I divided this out for printing. A couple of months ago, I made the Nightkiller dagger based on the anime's designs, and I divided that blade up for printing in a way that made finishing and painting super easy. I couldn't do that as easily here, just because of the dagger's designs, but I think if I'd spent more time and effort on it, I could have come up with something a little bit better. Anyways, if you want to make your own, all the files will be up on Thingiverse. Just check the video description down below for a link. I'll also have affiliate links to all the products I used in today's video. So if you're planning to order any supplies, that's a really easy way to support the channel. I'll be back next month with another project, so until then,